I think one of the greatest lies of our modern time and one of the greatest lies of this generation is this idea that nobody ever doubts themselves, that this imposter syndrome is only for the select few, but actually the high achievers don't suffer from it. The truth of it is that most high achievers are high achievers precisely because they doubt themselves. They are high achievers precisely because they don't feel like they're competent or worthy or good enough to be in the room. They are high achievers precisely because they think everybody else is better than them. So they prepare more, they work harder, they commit more time. I think that's just the nature of achievers. So I'll tell you guys an interesting story. I don't think I've actually ever told this story before. I was 17 years old and I was at the World Championship in public speaking in London. I think we were staying, I think it was in Reading, wherever, I can't remember. But I was traveling with this lady who, in my opinion, is still probably one of the greatest public speaking trainers in the world today. Her name is Patty Cromer. She's just unequaled. Like, Patty is unbelievably good. She's really that good. And so Patty was my chaperone and my trainer for the World Championships. You know, so we arrive in London, we flew Virgin Atlantic. And, you know, I've always found that the Virgin name very interesting. Like, if you consider the gyms, Virgin Active. I mean, did nobody tell them that those two words are a bit of an oxymoron? Virgin Active. It's just like, anyway. So anyway, we arrive in London and I'm competing in this competition, and we had to travel to the Dartmouth house where we were meeting everybody else with whom we were competing. And the guy who'd competed before me, Adam, a South African, had won the competition. So as a consequence of this, I'm arriving at this competition and I'm going to be competing with other kids, but they put me in the toughest group. So it's a bit like, you know, a bit like if you're watching UEFA or CAF or, you know, the FIFA World Cup. There's groups that you get put in, and certain groups have teams that are more potent, more competent than other teams. And so there's always like that they'll call the group of death, where all the best of the best are. And they put me in this group. Anyway, whatever. So I arrive there, I meet my other competitors, and the lady, I'll never forget, her name was Sarah Green. She was like the convener and mentor for all of us who were competing. And she looked me dead in the eyes. She was like, "Oh, you're Vusi." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "You're in the toughest heat." She said, "You're up against the current world number 1, number 2, and number 3. And then she just like looked away. She was like, "Oh, well, you know, it doesn't matter." And then she looks back at me and says, "But you know, you should feel really good about yourself just for being here. Like that you made it this far. Well done to you." Looks away, almost completely dismissing me. Like, you don't belong here. You shouldn't be here. You're not as good as the other guys. You're not in the world top 10, top 20, top anything. Frankly, we don't even know who you are. But good luck." I remember she said those words and I could get this like sunken feeling in my belly. So we finished the meet. I meet Georgia from Australia, Adam from Australia, Tim, George, who was from Argentina. Argentina is still a very good friend of mine today. And at the end of the meeting, we decide, you know, Patty Cromer's like, "Let me take you for something to eat." So we go in the underground on the Piccadilly line. And she takes me to this like Chinese restaurant. And we arrive and we meet a friend of hers. Pedikrama had a friend who was living in London at the time. Who was driving, I think it was a Peugeot 306 or something like this. And I meet her and she says, are you here to compete? I said, yes, ma'am. I remember she said to me, she said, it's mom, London. It's mom here in England. I said, yes, mom. English, eh? Anyway, so during the lunch, I think Patty could see visibly. I was quite visibly shaken. I think she could see that I was doubting myself, that I didn't know how this was going to go. Frankly, guys, if I am to be completely honest, I didn't know if I deserved to. I didn't know if I should have even been in the competition. I genuinely felt like an imposter. I really did. It's also important for me to say that in that year, I was the only black kid in the competition. We're going back, this is 2002. So anyway, we finish lunch. Patty can see I'm shaking. Patty says to me, we have to go back to the hotel now because you need to train. I was like, what the hell are you talking about, train? All the other kids are out, they're seeing London, they're going to Big Ben, you know, what are you talking about? I don't want to train, I don't feel like training. My brain, my headspace, my spirit is not in the mood to train. She says, we're going back to the hotel, you're training. And it's a true story. We go back to the hotel. She gets one of these small, like little conference rooms in the hotel. We walk in there and we start training. And I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not in the mood for this. But she forces it down my throat. We train. We go over my prepared speech over and over. I want to say that night we probably went over it like 20, 25 times, my prepared speech. At least 25 times. Then I think we did about 13 rounds of impromptu run. By this time, I'm just like, whatever. I want to get this over and done with. At the beginning, I really didn't feel like it. Around the middle of that training session, you know, you build up stamina, you know, you can feel your body feels good again, your physiology feels good, you start positive messaging. I focus on the things I can do better, not the people I'm competing with. And I think for a lot of us, a lot of you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, distracted, you feel like an imposter, you don't think you're good enough for what you're doing. The truth is you feel like that because you're focused on who you're competing with, not what you're doing. Keep your eye on what you're doing. So Pedikrama forces me to focus on intonation, my pitch, my pace, and pause. She forces me to focus on my iconography, my storytelling. And as I'm going through both my prepared and unprepared speeches, because I'm focused on the meta, the small things I can fix, I completely forget the big whale, these people I'm competing with. Toward the end of the session, I think our training session that night probably lasted like 3.5 hours. Toward the end of the session, she looks at me and she says, I want you guys to picture the scene. Pedikrama is an amazing woman. She's like, I think she's like 5'5", and she's got this like bushy, curled hair. You know, she's super cool. And if you go to her home, she's got a beautiful home in Cromerville. But if you go to her home, she's got these like little Buddhas around the whole house. So the whole house is full of these like laughing Buddhas everywhere. And she's got cats. So you can picture the scene. She's got a house. I think she probably has over 1,000 books in her home. Like I've seen libraries that have fewer books than Pedikrama does. She's got all of these books there. She's read most, if not all of them, really. Because you'll ask about this one and she'll remember it, she'll tell you. And she's got these laughing Buddhas everywhere in the house and these cats. But anyway, towards the end of the training session, she looks at me and she says, you know, Vusi, This is how she speaks.
You know, Vusi, you know, I could tell when that lady was talking to you that you were quite visibly shaken. I'm like, me? Nah, girl, I want that chicken. Come on, girl. This is me. I'm your boy. I got it.
Sure, Vusi. Sure. And she says, remember this. Everybody tomorrow starts at 0. Everybody. It doesn't matter who's coming into the competition with what ranking. It doesn't matter what competition they've won before this. All that matters is tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, when the bell tolls, everybody starts at 0. Just make sure you're the most prepared.